Hello, welcome to Talk a Good Game, everyone. It's match preview. Crystal Palace against West Ham United, the first game of the new year for both sides. Gonzo, as always, can I get your thoughts on our opponents, the Eagles, please?
Yeah, they're going really well. Started tremendously well, had a little dip, and then they picked it back up again. And I think he's done well, Vieira there. I mean, you have to say he has. It's not easy to change the culture and change the identity of a club. They tried it once before and got bitten, and they hastily had to go and find Roy Hodgson to go and rescue them and bring them some stability. And it was miraculous. I don't think Roy Hodgson gets the respect that he deserves. And actually, I would include the Crystal Palace fans. And actually, the Crystal Palace fans by the end grew weary and tired of him. But that is, because I remember going and checking it out, I remember saying in these videos, it seems like that's the longest Crystal Palace have ever been in the top division in my lifetime. Certainly, I went and checked it out, and it was. So actually, he gave them their longest run that they've ever had in the Premier League, and he stayed. I felt he built some, really good foundations. But it's not easy to transition from that safety first style of football, which he had, which is why there was some rumblings of discontent, of course, to something a little bit more expansive, a little bit more attractive, and that's what Vieira's brought. And you know what? They had one remit this season, Geo. One remit: make the transition and don't get relegated. And it looks like that will happen.
Yeah, as you say, Hodgson laid the foundations. It's up to Vieira to try and take them to the next level, and perhaps not necessarily this season in regards to higher up the table and stuff, but like you said, a style of football, a different brand of football, perhaps a little bit more attractive and entertaining for the fans. Do you think Vieira's doing that this season? Are you quite impressed by the job he's done so far?
Massively, yeah, massively. Can't worry too. I think he's bought well. I also think he's married in the other players that are already there quite well. So he's got a tune out of Benteke. All right, he's not featured so much in the last handful of games. CRYWHU, though, he's got a tune out of him. Ward's still playing. But he's also, I feel he's recruited well and brought in some sort of younger players. What I feel now is they're not as dependent on Zaha as they were. It was Zaha or bust, basically. And I'm pretty sure if you went and did your research and looked at the games where Zaha played and the games he didn't, then there would have been a massive disparity in the points totals of those games, or the average points. And now he's building something that's not as reliant on Wilfried Zaha, and I feel that's very, very important. He's changed the style, younger players. They're going to miss Gallagher when he goes back. Obviously, who wouldn't? But you've got to scout him in the first place. You've got to decide to bring him in. You've got to be brave enough to do that. And maybe by that point, Eze's, I know he plays a different position, but Eze's back, or has certainly started his rehabilitation. I think he featured in a game 2 or 3 weeks ago as well. The lad from Reading comes through and does a good job or whatever. So I'm pretty sure I'll buy well again. I like. Sorry, that's players is a different one, isn't it? But yeah, I think he's doing a good job.
I think he's doing a brilliant job. I think it was risky from Crystal Palace in two senses, because one, they completely changed what style of manager they go for, and they took a bit of a risk in Patrick Vieira because he doesn't have the most amazing CV. It wasn't a coup to get Patrick Vieira. I don't even think he was Crystal Palace's. Well, he wasn't Crystal Palace's first choice manager. They tried to get Nuno in as well. So it was a bit risky from them, but it was also risky in the transfer market too. They sort of tore up what they used to do, and I often refer to Crystal Palace as almost like the retirement home for Premier League footballers. That when you're the wrong side of 30 and you're looking for a 3-year contract on a comfortable wage, you could go to Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson would play. Roy Hodgson would trust you because you've got the experience. So they sort of just changed everything completely. And I was really hoping it would be a success, and so far it has been a success, and I'm bloody glad it has. I've got absolutely no affiliation to Crystal Palace, but I think this is as a romantic when it comes to football, if you like. I think this is a victory for football, which says you don't need to go down the same old route of British managers that is safety first, like you said, that try and approach a game as in we shall not lose, and actually go get a manager that plays we shall win and also we shall entertain. I think that's exactly what Vieira's brought to Crystal Palace. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching them this season. Not something I could say about Palace in the years gone by. The only time I'd enjoy watching Palace is when they'd get an unexpected result. They'd go to Etihad and they'd win, for example. I'd enjoy that, but generally it was quite poor to watch. I could completely understand why fans wanted Hodgson gone at the end of it. He did his job, Hodgson, but there has to come a time where you just try and move on. You try and evolve. You try and develop the club, take a step up. And I think they're doing that with Vieira. I've been very impressed by him. And there's some clubs, I think, injuries and whatnot go a little bit unnoticed. And as you touched on there, Eze, I think he's only played 1 or 2 games this season. That's it. Arguably one of their most important players. He's not been available at all to Patrick Vieira. He's just got on with it. And I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks in the Premier League, I think some clubs have shown their true colours a little bit, actually. And some managers have also shown their true colours. Vieira, Crystal Palace, a bit like Moyes, West Ham, a bit like Bielsa and Leeds to some extent. They've kept their mouth shut and they've just got on with it. Arteta and Arsenal as well. Mouth shut, just get on with the job. I mean, very impressed by Vieira, the players, and the football club as well. And it is a very solid season so far from them. Anyway, speaking of solid things, well, maybe not like that. You need to get a solid football app there. The number 1 football app for the football fan, Gonzo.
It's a 1 football app, as always. It's much better than a 2 football app and considerably better than the 10 football app. It has to be said. The great thing about the 1 football app is it will scour the internet and find all the stories for your chosen club, so you don't have to. It will find the best stories on your favourite websites. It will find the best stories in the newspapers, and it will tell you all the transfer, all the injury, and all the team news. All you got to do is when you sign up, is stipulate which team you support, and it puts it all together for you. Best of all, it's free, but please do use the link below because they'll know you've come from us, and we'll get a good pat on the back then.
Next season, Gons, I know it's almost like, oh, well, it's the new year now. We're halfway through the season, time to look to next season. I don't often speak about clubs, but I just feel like Crystal Palace, I think it's safe to say, won't be in a relegation fight, won't qualify for European football. They're going to be mid-table security and stuff like that. So I think I feel safe in saying what should the plan be for Crystal Palace in this summer going into next season?
Well, if I were them, I would see what the transfer budget is because I mean they've bought well, as I say. I think they have bought well, recruited well. Let's put it that way. I think it's a case of if I were them, I'd be looking. I think can we bring in 2 £30 million players? That's what I would do with that. Can we get £60 million budget, 2 £30 million players? And go up a level. So actually, can we now spend all of next season in the top 10? Now, that top 10 might translate into a top 8 finish. You might achieve a little bit better than that, but it gives you something to build upon. I understand why they've done it, and I think the Gallagher thing was a good thing to do, but at the end of the day, he goes away, and he either goes back to Chelsea, or he gets sold to the highest bidder, or he goes back out on loan somewhere. But Palace have no control over that at all. So at least if they go and buy a couple of players for 30 million, improves the team, and they have control. They have control of their own destiny. I think that might be quite good, and they can continue to get players on loan and whatnot. But target the top 10 next season would be something I think really good. And if that brings and yields a stronger squad, which it will, you never know, they might have a run in the cup as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. Really, I think Gallagher should be the number 1 priority in the summer. I think you're right. They've also got no control of it. But I think they've got an influence, which is Gallagher's must surely be enjoying his time at Sellers Park. He's a first name on the team sheet. And he wouldn't be able to go to other clubs and get the freedom he does. I think Vieira very much has taken the shackles off Gallagher in games. And, Zaha's arguably got a more disciplined role than what Gallagher does when I watch him. Zaha has to track back. He's out on the left and stuff. Whereas Gallagher seems to just have this free role in the middle of the park. And I think it works for him. I'm not sure he'd get that sort of favour, if you like, elsewhere in the team. It would be difficult for Vieira once Eze is fully fit and Elise is fully fit. How do you get all those players into the team? That's something Vieira needs to work out towards the end of the season. But I think Gallagher should be the number 1 priority. And you said 2 £30 million players. Don't want to say Gallagher be more than that, but he probably would be. And I think he needs to be the number 1 target. If he keeps him in there and continues doing what they're doing in the transfer window, the player profile they've been going after is absolutely perfect. Get a couple of them in important areas and try and look at replacing Joe Ward long term. I think they're on to another comfortable season next season. Players you admire, we've already spoken about a couple of them, but take your pick.
Yeah, well, obviously the Gallagher's the obvious one there, is in. We've spoken about Zaha so much. Obviously, we admire his ability, but his attitude is to be found wanting sometimes, isn't it? Maybe some of the other unheralded ones. I think Butland was a good sign in goal, Geo. I think that's been a steady, a good, skillful goalkeeper who had a very, very good career. They wouldn't have been able to buy Jack Butland when Jack Butland was at Stoke, and then everyone wanted 25 million for him. No one had to get him then, so they went and got him at the right time. And I think he's a steady Eddie goalkeeper there. I think Kiate's playing well for him, mate. I think, and funny enough, I actually think older Hughes as well. Actually, I think the midfield does okay with Gallagher in there. He swaps it around a little bit, and it is Hughes from Derby, right? Will Hughes, that is the same one, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was Derby, Watford, Crystal Palace.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, so he was the he's meant to be the next big thing. I remember him playing for the England under-21s, I think it was, and you know, it never really happened. And now's his time. You know, now's his time to really show that I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater, but actually he's playing really well. And I loathe to compare it to Leicester, because Leicester's level is a lot better. When we say sometimes, and Ndidi and Tillemans and Maddison, they've all got sort of different jobs, but they have clearly defined roles. And I look at Palace's midfield, I think they've all got clearly defined roles, and I think that's really important when you're sending instruction out. I think he's a part of that. He's getting a tune out of players. Schlupp's come in, not for long. I think he's going away. He'd be away soon for a month or 6 weeks, quite possibly. But Schlupp's come in and played well. Tompkins is playing well. He's just getting a tune out of a lot of these players. And as I say, fair play to him. Edouard came in as well, didn't he? Someone everyone was looking at. So Edouard sometimes plays, sometimes Benteke, sometimes Matata. But you say Matata, I say Matata. But he's probably one superstar there at the moment, and it's not Wilfried Zaha, which is really funny, isn't it? Everyone else is doing a really good job there.
Yeah, I think Edouard's a fantastic signing for them. I think he's been. I think he's actually doing okay. Crystal Palace, obviously, in the last game, they scored 3. He had a hand in all 3 goals. He was involved in all 3 goals for Crystal Palace, so he's sort of come into form at the wrong time for West Ham. But I think there's a lot more to come from him. I think Crystal Palace will see a lot more from Edouard in the future. I would expect him to be a little bit better than he has been. Doesn't mean he's not doing well. I just thought he'd do a bit more. He's one player I wish we got him at West Ham. I do. But the player that's possibly impressed me the most for Crystal Palace this season, because I expected this from Gallagher. We liked him at West Brom. My expectation of Gallagher is Mitchell at left back. And the more I watch him, the more impressed I get by him. I remember when he first came into the team, he almost got into the team because Van Aanholt was playing silly beggars and whatever. He got in and it felt like it was a bit of a stopgap, and it's not. He's just got better and better. And obviously they took in Ferguson as well, who's just been injured permanently, I think. But I sort of half expected Ferguson might go play left back because he'd played there for West Brom and stuff. But every time I see Mitchell, he just gets better and better. And I actually think he's probably one of the more underrated left backs in the Premier League at the minute. Him and Luke Thomas at Leicester, the two that are standing out for me, that they don't seem to get as much plaudits as they perhaps should. And at the minute, this is going to sound mental, but Chelsea are screaming out for a left wing back. And if I were Crystal Palace, I'd be a little bit worried, actually, because I think he's good enough to step up eventually. But if you wait too long, he becomes too expensive. So, there you go. That's it for Crystal Palace. Time to talk about West Ham. And normally I say, let's talk about the defence kind of thing. I'm going to go straight in with the big one, because there is one talking point going on. That's Declan Rice. Declan Rice was suspended for the previous game. He's now available for this one. However, the midfield 3 was bloody good against Watford. Not only was it good, it worked well. It got the best out of Soucek, it got the best out of Lanzini, and it got the best out of Mark Noble. So how do we incorporate Declan Rice into this team? Because there's no doubt he comes back in.
Yeah.
But does he go centre mid, defensive midfield, or even centre back? Where would you like Declan Rice to play against Crystal Palace?
I'd just play him in Mark Noble's position that Mark Noble played there. And, we agreed with Ranieri in the end. They weren't properly trained. They weren't fully fit. That was a cream crackered Watford team. And he's not going to be afforded, Mark Noble wouldn't be afforded that same luxury, let's say, against Crystal Palace. He'll be sort of snapping at his heels, really. So I'll bring Declan in. But I would, even if you want to do it half and half or something like that, and maybe in the second half, Declan's allowed to get forward a little bit more if necessary or something. But I'd actually start off by playing him defensive midfield, Geo, really, and leave Soucek exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. I think if Rice goes back into the midfield, I think he almost has to take Mark Noble's role, which is essentially, unfortunately, don't enter the final third. Whether Declan's okay with that or not, I don't know. I've got a feeling that Rice prefers his new role, whereas Soucek perhaps doesn't prefer his new role. And Moyes has got a bit of, not issue as such, but it's a slight inconvenience that he's got to do something. He's got to manage it. And unfortunately, Moyes has got to do what's best for the team. And after recent performances, and it's not just against Watford, it's the ones before that as well, I think that means if Declan Rice goes in Mark Noble's role, Declan Rice goes in Mark Noble's role, which is defensive midfield, and allows Soucek to continue that box-to-box thing that we saw against Watford, because that was his best performance by far this season from Soucek. It wasn't even close to another performance we've seen from Soucek. And I think that's one option. I think the other option is putting him in centre-back. I guess it depends on how confident you are, but I just feel in the last few games the Dawson Diop partnership's been a bit shaky, Gonzo, and we don't have any other options unless we turn to the youngsters, notably Elise, and put one of them in. I just think it's too risky. It's too bold. As much as I want to see youngsters in there, I do think that's maybe a little bit too soon for them. So the only other option is put Declan Rice at centre-back in place of one of Dawson or Diop, and then leave Mark Noble where he is, because I thought Noble's performance against Watford was fantastic, and it's unconfirmed at the minute, but the suspicion is that Conor Gallagher is one of the players that has COVID, and that's why he was missing in the last game, and therefore will miss this game. But like I said, it is unconfirmed. That's just because he just wasn't there. He wasn't in the last squad. There was no talk about injury or anything. If Gallagher isn't fit for Palace, I think that's a massive difference. I think Crystal Palace's team changes completely without his sort of energetic player in midfield. So would you be averse to Declan Rice centre back, or do you think we'd miss him in centre midfield too much? Or
yeah, I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't play him at centre back. I've got to be honest with you, particularly not in a two there. I don't think he's practiced enough at playing centre half in the Premier League. So I just wouldn't, particularly not in a two. So I'd leave it. We're almost feels like we're almost through that. With Zuma back in training again, it feels like we're almost through it. I'd sort of leave it be and then deal with it. And we did look better defensively as well. I know Dennis scored a lovely goal and planted Dawson on his arse, but it just felt with Soufal there and Johnson there as well, it just felt a little bit more solid. And it would be more solid if Declan played a disciplined role for this game. You'd have Declan Rice, one of the best interceptors and tacklers in the Premier League, sat right in front of that back four. So it could be doubly difficult for Palace to get through. And that's no bad thing, because he was a pain in the arse, Gallagher, when he played us earlier on in the season. Yeah,
I completely agree with you, actually. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate and see what the options are. I would like to see Declan Rice in defensive midfield as well. But discipline one, shackles on Declan and shackles off Thomas Soucek. I think that's the way I'd like to see it against Crystal Palace. So there's a good chance that we're going to have the same 11 again, Gonzo. I think there's one position we're unsure of. So the back four is as normal then?
Yeah, absolutely. Unless there's some CRYWHU news that we don't know, but I'd go with exactly the same as it was against Watford.
And for those that don't know, that is Soufal right back, Dawson Diop in the middle with Ben Johnson left back. Declan Rice defensive midfield. Centre midfield?
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah. I'd go with the Lanzini and Soucek thing again. Whatever they were getting up to, whatever they were doing. It's funny, they both had license, really. As I say, I thought. I know you asked about the observation that some people had thought Lanzini was further forward, some people thought he was further back. I think that told its own story that people were undecided, because I looked at it, I thought he's everywhere. And so obviously he had some freedom there. Soucek clearly had some freedom. So that's why it is important that there is a disciplined marker behind them to sort of sweep up any mess in midfield, really. So yeah, I'd go with that three.
Yeah, I think it's important to have them in there. As for the Lanzini thing, like I said, I thought in the Watford game he was playing centre midfield. Mark Noble basically said that he knew Lanzini would drop in deep next to him, pick the ball up and stuff. So I think you're possibly right that he did essentially have some sort of free role. And I think it's important against Crystal Palace, because the Declan Rice being disciplined thing almost allows an extra attacker into the team. And also Lanzini and Soucek almost start running from deep, rather than when I spoke about our attack being stale in recent weeks, it sometimes feel we're a little bit too rigid in that maybe if Fornals is in the 10 role, for example, he's constantly just 10 yards away from the centre back, so there's no movement or anything like that. At least with Lanzini coming back or Soucek coming from centre midfield, actually, when you move up the pitch, there's two of them running through the middle of the park, and often we don't go through the middle very often in recent weeks, West Ham. We've been quite insistent on getting the ball wide and getting crosses, and that's okay when it's working, but it hasn't been working, and that's when it becomes a bit of an issue. But against Watford, I felt that we were a little bit more willing to just try and attack down the middle of the pitch, actually, and it worked. The runs from Soucek and Lanzini absolutely pivotal to that. And the cover from Mark Noble was also pivotal. So I think I'd like to keep the exact same way that we played against Watford, against Crystal Palace, and it'll be setting up for a bloody good game as well. Antonio up front, Bowen on the right. Who's the one you'd like to see on the left? It's a 50-50, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a 50-50. It's Benrahma or Vlasic.
Yeah, and I was tempted to go with Vlasic, but I will go with Benrahma because he's going to go off. We're going to lose him for a little while. You feel he felt, well, he was excellent, scintillating, as I said, in that first half against Watford, tailed off in the second half. But so what? If he tails off in the second half, you bring Vlasic on. Also, one of the best performances I've seen Benrahma have is against Crystal Palace, actually. I mean, can't even remember, but it was got man of the match, certainly, when we did the review. And you're absolutely right. The next player that Crystal Palace will probably look to replace is Ward. And, you know, you've got to absolutely bang on. He's done a Trojan job there, you know, shoring things up at right back. But it never even was the best right back in the world, to be honest with you. And I'd like to see someone really go up against him and use their skill. He's a little bit clunky, Ward as well. So let's see some nutmegs. Let's see some stuff. Let's see him being taken on and drawing some fouls so we can get a free kick and nod the ball in the back of the net. So, you know, I was, people target us with Asuaku often enough. I'll be targeting Ward.
I think I'd like to see Vlasic start for the same reasons as you. That Benrahma is off to African Nation, so I'd almost like to get Vlasic in the team and say, right, well, you're who we're going with here on in, unless we sign someone new early on in January, which is unlikely. Let's get Vlasic in the team. He's just got his goal, so and I've maybe it's a bit sentimental, but I've seen sort of his interviews over the last few days as well, Vlasic, and he's one of those players it's like the Fornals effect. You just listen to what he's saying, you think, oh, you just want him to succeed, you know. Did you see his interviews? Friends and family are a bit savage, aren't they? Did you see Vlasic said that his friends and family say to him, you don't play very often at West Ham. You're enjoying it there. His friends and family are reminding him he's not getting much game time on the pitch at the minute.
I'll tell you what I did love. I'm glad you brought it up, actually, because I completely forgot. I loved his celebration. And it wasn't just across hammers, right? Bang, he does that. Then straight away look for Bowen to say thank you. There are so many. I don't just mean at West Ham. I just mean overall. It's a team game. There are so many indulgent players, I find. Now, that goal was completely created by Bowen, that goal. Vlasic was there. Lovely. Well done, Vlasic. He got there. It was a tap-in. It was a side foot in. The skill, that all the stuff was done by Bowen. And how many players do you see would turn around then and run off and do a celebration? It's all about me, a self-indulgent celebration. Loads of them. I hate it, actually. And I loved the fact that first he did, I'm a hammer. Where's the guy that made my goal? There you are. I went straight up to Bowen and said, thank you very much. Says an awful lot about someone's character. That's the first thought is not about personal glory. And that, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
The oily geezer Old Trafford had been doing a 30-yard sprint before shouting Suey at the top of his voice and at the corner flag if he scored that goal. But speaking of running 30 yards or even 100 yards, Fabianski bolted down the other end of the pitch to celebrate with Vlasic. Yeah. Fabianski ran 100 yards to celebrate because Vlasic scored. It just goes to show Declan Rice's tweet as well and stuff. He's clearly a well-liked character in the team as well, Vlasic. And I saw his interview and I just thought, I want him to do well. And sometimes attitude gets you somewhere in life. Hard work beats ability when ability is not working hard and stuff like that. I would like to see Vlasic in the team. I think, yes, Benrahma had a really good game. I'm not doubting that. But I just think with what's around the corner, I think this is a good game to get Vlasic in there, playing well, hopefully. Keep the confidence going because we're going to need him in a couple of weeks' time. If we beat Crystal Palace, Gonzo, is everything rosy again? I mean, you've been a bit grumpy prior to the Watford game. 1 win in 7 before the Watford fixture. Beat Watford convincingly. If we win against Crystal Palace, so we sort of smiles on faces again.
Yeah, well, fickle business, isn't it, really? Yeah, absolutely. I was a bit grumpy. I was a bit worried how we were going, where we were going. Yes, but I don't want it to mask over what the problems we clearly have, which is... someone said, what do you expect? 3 of our first choice back four were missing. Well, yeah, of course. What I expect is for us to be more prepared for that, to have better
Yeah, but then Crystal Palace will be missing 2 of their main attackers all season. That mean they shouldn't score goals. I mean,
well, no. I agree. But what you can't do is turn around and say, okay, do you know what? I'm gonna 3 of our back 4 are missing. I'm not going to pass comment on Masuaku getting skinned. They're still happening. It's still happening. You still make a critique of it. But he shored that up, and that's the thing. So that makes me more positive. I do think a lot of it is fatigue, but again, what do you do? Just carry on saying, "Oh, okay, it's just fatigue. So we'll accept the losses." Well, no, improve the squads, do something about it. Let's address the slide. So yeah, I was a little bit grumpy about that. So yeah, look, if we're back in and we get another 3 points in this game, and it's starting to look a little bit healthier again, and we've got the Norwich game in the bag, haven't we? To get, I don't want to say in the bag, still to play. That's 3 points, 3 guaranteed points. Make that into a little meme or something. We've got that one to come. Then things do look a lot better, but what I don't want then is for us to turn around and say, "Oh, right, well, everything's rosy again. We don't need another striker. We don't need to reinforce. We don't need whatever position you think we may or may not need." I don't like it, and I don't like the sounds that come out of the club. I'm not buying into all this stuff that Moyes hasn't identified any players. I ain't having that at all. Moyes will know players that he wants. The board will know the players that Moyes wants. If it's all smoke and mirrors to make it, so they can get in and get a deal done under the radar so nobody knows, great, fine. But I'm not buying that. So I just hope that a run of victories doesn't mask the problems, not the problems, but the improvements that can still be made at the club.
Yeah, I think we've got to take the one win. That's 7 games. I think you've got to take it as a reminder, a little bit of a warning, a bit of a reminder, which is, you're not quite there yet. There's work to be done in the transfer window. You need to get players in. And we can be wiser for it, that run of form that we had. And I know it's not the most awful form in the world, is it? And we're going into this game with 5th in the Premier League. But that is also helped by teams around us dropping points. Man United dropped points at St James's. Tottenham dropped points against Townmen at Southampton. Those kind of results help us and help our league position, even though there's still games in hand. But that form was bad for us. It was bad for David Moyes' tenure at West Ham. And if you want European football, that is bad run of form. And I think you've got to take that as a little bit of a warning. And like you said, we've sorted the left-back thing. And I think that might have helped Moyes make up his mind long-term regarding Arthur Masuaku at West Ham United. And also I think he's probably decided about Ryan Fredericks at West Ham United as well, just because of his injuries, the form of Ben Johnson too. So there's things to take from that. And if we win this game, it feels like we're reasonably back on track, but there's still big work to be done in January, and we cannot forget that little. It just shows how thin our squad is sometimes. 1 or 2 injuries, and suddenly everything starts to collapse a little bit. Are you confident, though? Selhurst Park, New Year's Day, confident for winning?
Oh, I wouldn't say confident. I think it'd be a tough game. I thought they gave us was a game of 2 halves last time, wasn't it, really? And in many respects, Palace got a little bit better depth than us. Certainly in the striking department, they do. Absolutely, they do.
That's because they've got more than a striker. I think most teams would be us with that.
Yeah, funny. But they can be effective as well, as you say. Edouard can be effective. Benteke on his day, it can be it's a nightmare for central defenders to mark. And whatever his name is, he scored some goals recently. So Ayu's come back into the fore and possibly
Zaha's back.
Oh.
Zaha's back. He missed the last game.
Zaha's back. Yeah, he was suspended, wasn't he? So they can cause us bother. Make no mistake about it at all. But I don't think their defence are all that. Tompkins has been playing not bad, actually, to be fair. But I don't think their defence. I think we can get it. I think our attackers are better than their defenders. And if we're whatever combination we have, if Lanzini's loading the bullets for Bowen and Antonio in particular, with Soucek making late runs in there, they're going to find that very, very hard to deal with. But they can cause us bother as well. So no, confident would be the wrong term, really. Interesting game, I think.
Yeah, I'm not too confident either. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a close game. You say our attackers are better than their defence. I think their attackers are better than our defence as well, though. I think that's the slight problems. It swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I think it'll be an evenly match game, to be honest with you. It depends what West Ham turns up. It also depends what Crystal Palace turns up. Because while we've been impressed by them this season, there's been 1 or 2 games I've watched where they've been quite flat. They've struggled to create too much. and they have been a little bit pedestrian. So, and like you said, the game at London Stadium, game of two halves. First half was all West Ham. Second half was all Crystal Palace. The second half was all Conor Gallagher, wasn't it? Yeah. Second half was all Crystal Palace. And they were, even though we played poorly in some of these games, you know, they lost to Southampton, for example. I wasn't impressed by Southampton. We were just crap. They weren't good. Crystal Palace is one of the few teams this season that we've come up against. I actually thought, oh, they were better than us. Even if it was just over 45 minutes, they were better than us with the ball, off the ball, playing football. They were better than us. That leaves me a little fear. I just think, while we got a good win against Watford, and to be fair, you could say this about Palace, his win against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace beat Norwich 3-0 the other day. I don't know if you can read too much into both victories because the opponents are that bad. Watford and Norwich are just that poor. So it was almost like...
And Norwich got in their defence, by the way. Norwich were getting at their defence. Norwich got right in behind the Palace defence a few times. Yeah, so it'll be a good game. I'm optimistic, though. Can I get any final words from yourself, please, and your score prediction? No, I just think a good game and a nice game for no real travel, is it? For anybody, makes sense over the Christmas period to play a London team against another London team. So I think that's good. Be a good one, be a loud one for the fans. Will be allowed. You know, the away fans will be loud as ever. And so really interesting one. Can't help but think back to the previous game, and I think that might be the scoreline again, Geo, because I do think it'll be. I think both teams can score, and neither team defends particularly well at the moment. So I think we might be heading for 2-2, mate. I'm not too far off you. I'm going to go Crystal Palace 1, West Ham 1. I think it'll be a tough game, and it's difficult because, you know, our opinions will change, especially more now than ever when you see the lineups and stuff, especially with COVID at the minute. And Moyes is keeping his cards close to his chest in his press conference today, because he said, "Oh, we're clear here. Yeah, we've had confirmation that Fernandez has got COVID or had COVID and missed the Watford game." But Moyes has even mentioned that in his press conference. So it insinuates he's sort of not telling anyone what's going on, which I understand. Why would you? But I think Crystal Palace is the same. So they might be missing players. We might be missing players. But as it stands, I'm going to say Palace 1, West Ham 1. Tough game for both teams, but should be a bloody good game as well. Anyway, 5:30 kick-off on New Year's Day, which means at 4, we will be live with our build-up show right here on this channel, where we'll take a look at the West Ham team, the Crystal Palace team, try and win one of you guys a little bit of cash. What a good way to start the year that will be, as well as 3 points for West Ham. So come back on New Year's Day. Join us. If you enjoyed this preview, drop a like, comment, subscribe. You're around here, myself and Gonzo. Catch you in a bit.